Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Dear Death to Life, where we find stories of transformation and change that have benefited lives from all over the world. Today's guest, Terry Power, is very fascinating. He has produced music videos for MC Hammer, Tupac. He did the video for Deion Sanders' Must Be the Money. He's done Barry White. He's done NWA. And it's all about navigating and dealing with and generations of change. Terry's also been a Division I basketball player at Princeton and also has experienced loss. He recently was a part of the LA fires in the Palisades. And today, we're going to talk about those things, but also what he does now, which is wealth management and particularly NIL. Terry's story is rich with fun, humor. I've never met a wealth manager before that's also produced videos for a hip hop community that has done videos with Tupac. He's actually in the Must Be the Money video. So look it up on YouTube. It's actually pretty cool. I looked it up today and I think he has hair. But Terry, welcome.
Thank you, Jerome. It's great to be here and it's great to reconnect with you. That was really interesting when we bumped into each other at the gym at the complex where we live. I knew I recognized you. I just couldn't quite remember it. But then we started talking and it all came rushing back. Yeah, those were great days when you were coaching my son with John Fisher at Hoop Masters. Those were intense games, and youth basketball in Southern California, like it is around the country, is very intense and a lot of fun. Yes, in January, we lost our house in the Palisades fire, along with 5,600 other homeowners. And it was tough. It was really tough.
So Terry, let me ask you a question. With losing your home, what lessons do you have, or what did you learn about yourself and your family that you could share with our audience that they may could use when they're dealing with a disruptive and being resilient or something of great loss?
Well, I think the most important thing is knowing that everything is replaceable. We lost everything. I was able to save some wedding pictures and pictures of my kids, but basically we lost everything. And that really hits home for quite a while. You carry that around, and I probably always will. But most important thing is that everyone is safe. Our dog is safe, and we all are together, and our family is safe. And that's the most important thing. The other thing is that, you start to think that things that you lost, which, I mean, I lost a lot of things, a lot of rare books and rare records. I had a very large album collection. I had a lot of signed memorabilia from sports, but it's stuff. George Carlin has a great episode about stuff. And I remember someone sent that to me and I really got a kick out of it. So it's just stuff. You got to move on. Maybe that's why they call it stuff.
Tell us a little bit more about your experiences in the music industry and how did that go? How did you land there from basketball to music to being a wealth manager? That's a very interesting transition.
I was actually in the film business. I went to Princeton, graduated, and I was a reader at Warner Brothers in New York, story analyst. I read books and screenplays all day and wrote reports, and then got a job with Johnny Carson Productions, and I was there for 5 years, and I had developed a movie on John Lennon and Yoko Ono, which ended up getting at NBC a 3-hour TV movie. And then after that, I started producing films on my own, short films, primarily short films. We got a film into Sundance. It was a half-hour film. And then I met a director who I production managed his film. And then shortly after that film was over, his name is Rupert Wainwright. He gave me a call and said, "Hey, Terry, I'm producing a video for an artist named MC Hammer. Do you want to produce it for me?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." So we did that video. It was Turn This Mother Out. It was a huge success. And at the same weekend, we did a video for Too Short called Life Is Too Short. And that was a big hit. And then we just started making a lot of videos. And that led to doing all the videos for MC Hammer. And we started doing videos for NWA. And later on, Tupac, another director that I worked with, did that video. That lasted 12 years. That was an incredible run. And we won a lot of awards. It was a really good business. But then, the business changed. Apple became the de facto distributor of music.
Mm.
People stopped buying CDs because they were able to buy singles and put the singles onto their iPod. So the amount of videos that were made reduced. And so the handwriting was on the wall. And, the music business hasn't really made any money until streaming came in. And artists made all their money through touring and merchandise. So at that point, I had an advisor at a big company. I had two advisors, and I was managing my own money. So I decided to become a financial advisor. I had studied economics at Princeton as well as
Okay.
politics. So I had a good background. And so I made that transition. And then very helpful.
That's a very diverse, we talk about diversified portfolios. You've had a diversified life. So your life portfolio actually awesome. And Too Short had a revitalization of his song in the Super Bowl. There's a guy that his name was Gilly, and he's done Too Short's song on, and so he's got a whole total revitalization of that one song is now a huge hit, and this generation of kids and people have finally connected to that song because this guy named Gilly has made it very popular with the Philadelphia. He did it in Philadelphia all the time. If anybody that's listening to this, look it up, go on YouTube, look up Gilly or Instagram, and you'll see him doing the Eagles on, and it's a great song. The diversification that you've experienced is very fascinating. From going from being in a video with Deion Sanders to doing wealth management and now NIL. So Terry, let's talk about name, image, likeness, NIL, and the identity crisis, or not, I want to say crisis, but the identity change that athletes go through. And how does that compare to executives that you've seen? And in my work, I deal with a lot of executives who are subject matter experts, and then all of a sudden they become VPs, or they're in the C-suite, and now they have to move people versus subjects. So let's talk a little bit about that from your experience.
Well, NIL athletes now, because they're making money, they're not waiting on the system. They're making that money now. They're entrepreneurs. They're thinking about their brand. They're thinking about how they're going to handle this money. And they're relying on financial advice. They're relying on all kinds of financial issues that would come much later, maybe when they turn pro or something. But they're basically, being monetized now. And that's a big responsibility. So their identity, they grow up quick to handle these matters. And I think a lot of the things we talked about before with coaches like, Russell White and John Fisher and these guys that really demand accountability. It's great preparation for that type of responsibility. I think, they have to learn a new skill set. I have a client, he went from being a manager to being a director. You're going from the floor, so to speak, to the corner office. So he had to learn a whole new skill set to deal with all the people that he used to work with, because he was now telling them what to do. And that required a new set of skills. And I know he turned to an executive coach to help him out with that. I think that's probably the biggest thing that executives have to deal with is learning a new skill set. And obviously they have a different group of people that they have to report to. They have to report to the board of directors. They're interacting with the SEC. They're interacting with types of legal counsel. And a lot of these people have their own board of advisors, so to speak, people in the industry or outside the industry who are, giving them advice, whereas athletes, they're dealing with their agent, lawyers, financial advisors, NCAA, NIL Go, the new organization that's being run by Deloitte. Those are probably the differences.
Yeah, let's transition to branding, because one of the things that I work with my clients that go through that process, that transition, and the identity of being a subject matter expert to now being a supervisor or being a VP or being in a C-suite, is their new identity and their branding. So with NIL, there's also a branding of that particular athlete. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's your experience, and how have you seen that play out in the sports world, and what do you think are the key elements for a good branding?
Authenticity is probably the most important thing,
Mm-hmm.
is to be yourself, be real, because people will recognize that when you're real, when you're yourself, and be
Mm-hmm.
consistent at it. I think the other thing is about what your message is. Is it grit? Is it, being a genius? The shot maker, being having a really clear, simple message about who you are. I think having a purpose is really important for standing up for something that's beyond just financial gain.
Mm-hmm.
Who exemplifies that really well is Stephen Curry. He's really remarkable in that way. He's not only revolutionized the game at all levels, with the
Right.
three-point shot. The we're seeing today is really a direct result of, and at the high
Mm-hmm.
school level, every level, he revolutionized the game. I saw an interview with him the other day. It was on CNBC talking about his company SCC30.
Right.
And CNBC is a financial network.
Mm-hmm.
And the interviewer was asking him a question about, well, what is he working on now, his next move? And he thought for a second and he said, I'm just trying to be the best husband I can be the
Mm-hmm.
best father I can be. That just floored me. Here's a
Mm-hmm.
guy who is doing all kinds of, businesses, playing as much as he does in the NBA. And those are the things that are on the top of his list. And that's on all our list.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we all tell ourselves, I got to be a better husband. I got to be a better father, and that's something that just really hit home for me. So that's a great purpose for him. So I was really impressed with that. And other players have the same thing, and they become identified with that sort of purpose. Kobe practice harder than anyone else, really having a purpose. Or LeBron James, will to succeed and play. I mean, he's 40 years old and being an activist, saying what's on his mind.
That's important. And there's three takeaways that I want to unpack that you gave that I heard, and we can unpack them one by one. One is don't hedge. The other one is know your why. And the third one is being intentional. So let's jump into don't hedge. So there's something called in your industry, the hedge funds and things like that. But in my industry, I'm always working with people on being clear on their communication, being
Mhm.
very clear what they want. A lot of times, new managers and new VPs and new executives, or even junior staff, will hedge. They won't ask what they want. I remember the biggest lesson I got was from my mom, and I remember I wanted something, and I didn't quite. I was about 8 years old, so I had my friend ask her for it. My mom was a black mother from the South, and she said, "Boy, if you ever have anyone come and ask me for something that you want, I'm gonna give you a whooping." And I said, "Wait, what?" She says, "Never hedge. Ask for what you want. Now you may not get it, but still ask. You have to be courageous enough to ask." So
Right.
talk about your industry, and I know hedging is sometimes important in your industry, but how does hedging play out for an NIL participant?
Well, in my industry, I think the most important thing is communication. You got to pick up the phone, getting ahead of things, seeing around the corner. I had an issue recently where I got an email and the
Mhm.
client, I mean, you would have gotten the email and you might have said, oh, the client got that information. But in this case, he didn't get the information because it went
Right.
to the wrong address. I called him and he was so happy that I picked up the phone and called him. Communication, I think, is key. And obviously, because in sports and basketball, I mean, that's what NIL is all about. It's these athletes who have the opportunity to communicate their brand, which they've worked on for many, many years. And now they have an opportunity to communicate who they are to be branded to a product. The advertising world loves it. And, in college basketball are doing so
Right.
well with NIL. And I
Yeah.
think studies have shown that their NIL returns for women are higher than men. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese,
Mhm.
Paige Beckers, they've been doing very well.
Yeah, Andre Wilson. Yeah. So you said something that just I'm like, oh yes, yes, great. I work with my folks always about seeing around corners, being able to see around corners, being able to zoom out and to see what's out there. So when you say seeing around corners, and you look at the WNBA and you look at women's college basketball, someone saw around the corners. And for what does seeing around corners mean for you?
Well, in my industry, seeing around corners, I think that comes with experience because, like Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. You can see patterns in markets, and I think that plays into the idea of time in the market, not timing the market. You want to be in the market for those for the long haul to make sure you get those 10 biggest days in the market, which can really increase your performance. I mean, no one has a crystal ball. No one knows
Right.
where interest rates are going to go. If you're invested for the long period, you're most likely going to benefit from the market. That comes with experience. Sticking with the plan. And
Hmm.
having a plan. That's the most important thing. I mean, these teams
Hmm.
that win games, these huge games. I mean, that
Right.
Indiana game the other night. I mean, the coach Carlisle had an incredible plan. You could just see it play out. There were like 7 minutes left in the game, and Tyrese was not back in the game. And I said, why is he out of the game? It's the biggest game. He comes in with like 6:18 to go, I think, and just
Right.
made that incredible play,
Right.
and they had enough energy to close out that game. They weren't tired.
Right.
And I said,
Well,
wow, and that
well,
I guess was the game plan. So
well,
having a plan and then executing on the plan.
now we had talked about earlier, and I wanted to follow up on this. We talked about the new decision that came down around back pay for name, image, likeness, NIL back to 2016 for people whose image or likeness might have been used by their college. They can get retribution to then. But when I thought about it, I said, well, what about the people that are in 2012, 2010, 2009? Seems like they're getting left out. And there's a lot of name, image, likeness things done then. Is there any discussion around that or how those people are going to get retribution or is they just left out?
Can you imagine Pistol Pete Maravich in the NIL era, 44 points a game with no 3-point line? Did you hear about that study that Dale Brown did, in
Oh,
which
yeah.
like every single shot he took, and then they put the 3-point line in the shot chart? He would have
Uh-huh.
averaged 58 points a game. From what I read in that ruling, they 2000 or 2016 was the starting point because that's
Mhm.
when the first decision came down in the Ed
Mm.
O'Bannon case. Ed O'Bannon, very famous player from UCLA. His senior year, they won the NCAA tournament in basketball. He was the most valuable player of that tournament in 1995. I think he had 30 points and 17 rebounds in the final game. His number is retired at UCLA. There are only 9 players that have their numbers retired at UCLA. But anyway, Ed O'Bannon, several years after he graduated in 2014, he saw his video image in a video game, and he successfully sued the NCAA for the usage of his video image. In
Mm.
fact, the same judge, Claudia Watkin, who ruled on his case, just ruled on the House settlement. She's a judge in
Wow.
Northern California. So that really opened the door for NIL, for athletes getting paid eventually. And then in 21, there was another athlete from West Virginia that he was to open the door even more for athletes getting compensation from schools. And then the thing is, I mean, it's all about the name, image, and likeness. And then in 21, there was another athlete from West Virginia football that he was able to open the door even more for athletes getting compensation from the schools. And then the thing is, I mean, it's all about the name, image, and likeness. Their name on apparel, or they sign autographs, they make appearances. So that's the name. Image
Mhm.
is, the videos or branding in commercials or advertising. That's the image. And then likeness, it's really their identity, the likeness
Mhm.
part.
Mhm.
It's what makes them who they are. I mean, you could have an avatar. If a player had an avatar of himself, he would get paid for that. Or even a catchphrase. If Muhammad Ali was an athlete now and his catchphrase, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, was on T-shirts and they were being sold, and he was at the University of Louisville, he could make money off that
Mm.
catchphrase. That would cover that. That's the likeness part. So name, image, and likeness.
What impact are these changes going to have on athletes, their families, their legacies, and how, as you and your company, set to a system in this process?
Well, I think the current situation is really transformative. And I mean, these athletes are now going to be able to really control their identity through NIL, but they're also going to reap the benefits of a system that heretofore they weren't able to. You know, they generate revenues that are coming into these programs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these athletes, not every athlete becomes an NBA athlete. You know, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
players go overseas, but getting to the NBA is really hard. So this is a moment for athletes to really monetize a period in their life, a short-term period in their life, in an
Mm-hmm.
incredible way, and making enough money that can create financial freedom, not only for themselves, but possibly for their families. And I think it's great. I think it's really
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah, you and I were talking about this last week. Steve Prefontaine, who was one of my heroes. I was a runner in high school and college, and he was my hero. And I would do these practice runs, and I would really be thinking and channeling the energy of Steve Prefontaine. But he fought for this also back with the AAU when they would go to the Olympics, and we would have Olympic athletes representing our country in barracks, pretty much eating hot dogs and beans. And the AAU upper crust was in a hotel, five-star hotel, eating filet mignon. So Steve Prefontaine, and there's probably a lot of people don't know about him, he's an amazing pioneer in challenging the system and saying, we need to be compensated, we need to be paid. Talk a little bit about now that people are being paid, what are some of the pitfalls that they could potentially fall into, even if they're getting $25,000 or they're getting $5 million?
I think the most important thing is that the athletes understand that they're now entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
This is an opportunity to have their own business. They can be entrepreneurs because they're getting paid directly from the school or from, an advertiser, and they're receiving this money. It's not W-2 income.
Right.
It's 1099 income.
Hmm.
So they need to set up their entity in such a way that they can, take full advantage of the funds that they're receiving. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility involved, and to handle the funds in the right way.
That's
You
great. There's a street slogan that always gets said is keep your hands out of my pockets.
Right.
Stay out of stay out of my pockets. So that's always I learned a long time ago. I asked, and I think I was a teenager, and I said to someone, "Hey, like, seems like you're making more money than me or doing this." And he goes, "Stay out of my pockets." And I learned that a while ago.
It's
But
so true. It's so because
yeah,
you never know what other people have. I find that when other people are always talking about their money, I often wonder how much money they really have if they have to keep telling me how much money they have.
right,
So,
exactly. I'm going to take a moment to plug both of us and what we do. Terry, as you know, is a wealth manager. I am an executive coach and leadership coach, and we'd love to work with you in our different fields. It's all about transformation. It's all about learning. It's all about change. For me, my whole near-death life experience has really enhanced it. I'm at the anniversary. I think I'm 4 days away from when I actually took an MRI and died. And took them 12 minutes or so to get me back. And since then, I've been on this pursuit of not only sharing my experience, but also encouraging people to look at change and look at transformation. Because when you have a near death experience, you really do look at life a little bit differently. And I love what Terry is saying about comparison. I very rarely was into comparison, but I'm definitely not into it anymore. I just contrast. What did I do today? What do I want to do differently? How did my day go? Not how your day went or how this person went or what are they saying on the news. I really am singularly focused on the contrast of my own life and how do I continue to transform. So if you're looking for coaching, I'm available. If you're looking for wealth management, Terry's available. And we'll have some information at the end that you can contact either one of us. So as we continue, let's talk a little bit about what concerns do you have with the industry right now with wealth management, NIL, what are some of the pitfalls that you potentially see as we move into this new territory?
I think it's really important for athletes to understand the time frame that's involved here. It's a short time frame, and that it's really important to adopt a philosophy or a strategy that will enable them to manage and grow their assets. The players that I work with they're all really smart players, because of coaches like you. They have been coached, they're very disciplined, they're highly accountable because they for years have been showing up to practices. They're long-term thinking because they've had really long-term goals most of their life. So when you talk to them about the fact that this money might not last forever in terms of the income, they get that, So then it's about making, choices about what to do with the money. Money might not last forever in terms of the income. They get that, So then it's about making, choices about what to do with the money when they get it, and having it in place to really think about that. There's a statistic from 2003 till now. I think those are the years, but no, 35 years, 35 years. The 10 biggest days during that time period, your money would be less than half than what it would be at the end. So you want to be in the market for those 10 biggest days, those 20 biggest days.
What can talk a little bit more about the 10 biggest or 20 biggest days? What is that 10 biggest days, 20 biggest days?
Just recently, we had the sell-off market because of Liberation Day, April 2nd, when the tariffs came out. A few days after Liberation Day, we had the biggest day in the market in 23 years.
Wow.
Remember that day?
Yeah, yeah.
The NASDAQ was up 1,200 points, 12% in one day. And the S&P 500, I think, was up, or the Dow was up about 2,000 points. So that's what I mean by you have to be there for those biggest days. And those biggest days tend to follow the periods when the market is having really bad days, like it did on Liberation Day. The market during that period, there was a 4-day period in which the market was down every single day. And if you got spooked or nervous and you wanted out of the market, then you miss that huge update. That's what I mean by the 10 biggest days. So you want to be in the market to get those 10 biggest days over the course of the year, is sticking to a plan.
Yeah, all the things you're talking about, they're great. And that's what I love about sports. And that's what I love about coaching executives. My biggest mantra to them is that you have the capabilities, you're motivated, you're accountable, but what we have to work on is practice. And it's like AI, practice, we're talking about practice. But yeah, for a lot of people who are high achievers, they have to develop the discipline to practice new behaviors, new things that are going to take them further, because what got them there won't keep them there. So they have to keep moving forward. And for a lot of the people that I'm coaching now, it's absolutely, they have all the capabilities in the world. And now I'm just really working with them on practicing. And it sounds similar to what you're doing, is you're sort of initiating the whole idea of financial practice. So in closing, I want to talk a little bit about my own pivot. As many of you know from my other episodes and my PSAs around my near-death experience, over the past year, I'm coming up to a 1-year anniversary of my near-death experience where I coded. And I came out, and I remember this woman who met me in the emergency room. It was like an angelic experience. Her name was Sophia. And she looked at me and she said, "It was close, but you're going to be okay." And that has stayed with me. And I looked into her eyes and I saw something that I had never seen before. And remind you that I just came out of this MRI machine. I was gone. And then next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room, and this woman is a Black woman, and she said, "It was close, but you're going to be okay." But there was something so peaceful in her eyes. So from that day, I've been pivoting, and I'm still pivoting, and I'm still learning who I am and what I do. And you may say, well, dude, you're old to figure out where you are, but we have certain iterations in our life. So I'm in a season where this pivot is really powerful for me. So Terry, let's close with what pivots have you had in your lifetime?
So I made that transition, that pivot, so to speak. But the interesting thing about it was, and people asked me that question before, how did you go from doing that to what you're doing now? And the thing is, as a producer of music videos, you're in charge of the money. You're spending the money for the best possible outcome. And there are a lot of decisions involved about how you spend that money on the different departments because it's a very complicated process in that money is being spent. So you have to be really skillful in spending it in such a way for the best possible outcome. In a lot of ways, some of the skills were transferable, in managing the money for the best possible outcome. That was one of my big pivots.
Yeah, and let's hear that. What your slogan is again?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, must be the money.
Must be the money.
Yeah, must be the money. As
I think
homage to Deion Sanders.
So yeah, I love what you said about it. It must be the money because I work with a lot of women executives. So it's funny. A lot of my clients are women, and they're the VP level, or they're trying to get into the boardroom. It's that value, and we're working always on their identity. Walking into that room or walking into that Zoom meeting, understanding that their value is critical, that they have to see themselves as I have every right to be here as anyone else. And as they hold that energy, they hold that mindset, they hold that power. It's like I had a sensei, a spiritual sensei, that once told me about when I walked into a room, I needed to walk with that presence of I'm walking here, that you acknowledge me, you know me. I use that with a lot of my athletes and a lot of people that I work with. It's that presence, that very strong presence. So I'm really glad you talked about that value. So Terry, thanks a lot. How does somebody get in touch with you?
I work at Merrill Lynch in Beverly Hills. They can go to my LinkedIn under Terrence Power. It'll have my information there. My phone number at Merrill is 310-858-4615 and Terry_Power at ML.com. And that's how they can reach me. I'm right in Beverly Hills.
Great. Yeah, I mean, look, Terry's a fun guy. I think anyone who's looking to have a conversation with him will enjoy it. He has a wealth of knowledge, experience. And again, you know me. You can reach me at greencoaching.com, on my YouTube channel, Jerome Coach. I'm on Instagram and other that you can tag into. And I'm on LinkedIn. So you can reach me there, just Jerome Green on LinkedIn. All right. Have a great, great, great rest of your day. And remember, you can be near death, but you also could be near life. Have a great one.
Thanks, Jerome.
Thank you.
All right.
From music videos and courtside moments to wildflowers and financial wisdom, Terry Powell reminded us today that life doesn't move in straight lines. It twists, reinvents, and calls us forward. And if you're someone navigating change, maybe your career is shifting, identity feels uncertain, or you just like to come through and see things in a new way, I hope this conversation gave you a little inspiration. It gave you some courage to move forward, to find your own voice, your own identity, to move courageously. Because here at Near Death to Life, I believe that transformation isn't just a possibility, it's a calling. We're all called to make a change. We're all called to find our purpose in our moments. And one of the things that I do with my clients is assist them with that. I just don't try to fix people. What I do is encourage them to move, to take a step, to breathe, to enjoy, to stop comparing and contrast. Where are you today? Where do you want to be tomorrow? And how are you going to get there? To not get distracted by noise, but to use that noise as a professional athlete does, to inspire, to encourage, to make you stronger in your pursuit of your own happiness and purpose. So keep listening, keep asking better questions. And then what is your most important question that you can ask on a daily basis? I would encourage you to do that in the morning and in the evening. How did your day go? What really matters? What gives you the greatest opportunity to advance yourself, to grow, to learn, to inspire? And like a skin, like a snake, maybe it's time to shed your old skin. I'm currently finishing up my book, Near Death to Life, a few chapters left. And in one chapter, I talk about experiencing this shedding of skin. And it took me about 8 or 9 months after my near-death experience to realize that that's what happened to me. I was shedding this old skin, and I was starting to learn how to be in this new skin. I'm 4 days or 5 days away from my 1 year anniversary from my near-death to life experience. A big thanks to Terry Powell for showing us his honesty, his depth, his vulnerability, and his humor. It was fun. It was enjoyable. I really enjoyed working with him. And I was so excited that we actually live in the same area now. And I guarantee you that I'll have Terry back and I'll have a little bit more discussions. I want to get deeper into his music life and all those fun things. So until next time, keep living, keep learning, keep loving, and keep coming back to life. Come back to life. Enjoy the time you have. Until later, peace. Thanks for watching the podcast, taking the time out of your day to do that. Please drop your comments, what you liked or disliked, or if you have a different viewpoint. I really look forward to seeing those comments, and I will get back to you. And take time, if you can, to subscribe to my channel, Near Death to Life. Have a great day.